When the desert decides to give something back, it rarely does so cleanly. Each discovery comes layered in silence, fragments of a truth that refuses to stay buried. Morning of July 18, 2010. The desert was already above 90 degrees when a routine patrol began near Hidden Valley Trailhead. Rangers were performing a standard perimeter sweep, clearing expired campsite permits before midday heat made the work impossible. At 10:14 a.m., they noted an unattended vehicle parked in a restricted zone, silver 2009 SUV. Registration returned to Aaron Rowe, Riverside County. From a distance, the car looked ordinary, windows half open, a thin layer of dust on the windshield, a trail map folded neatly on the passenger seat. In the back, a car seat was visible. Facing rear unused, one ranger circled the vehicle, checking for signs of struggle. Nothing appeared disturbed, but when he touched the hood, it was warm. The ranger followed a faint line of footprints leading toward the valley's east ridge. They ended after 20 meters, fading where sand gave way to rock. Beyond that, the landscape spread open and silent. Roughly 30 meters from the access road, a collapsed tent rested beside a fire ring. The stones were arranged carefully, as if someone had meant to return. Inside the pit, gray ash concealed a darker layer of soot, still faintly warm. A half-burned log bore fingerprints later confirmed as Aaron's. The ranger began recording an audio log on a handheld device. No footprints after 20 meters, he said. No drag marks, no blood. He stopped, adjusted the mic, and added a final note. Tent abandoned, gear intact. The wind drowned out the rest. By early afternoon, the area was secured. At 1:47 p.m., a formal missing persons report was filed. The Joshua Tree search and rescue team mobilized within the hour. The first sweep covered a 2-mile radius around the campsite. Volunteers included climbers familiar with the terrain, off-duty deputies, and a handful of park visitors who refused to leave until they'd help. The search extended through nightfall, flashlights cutting through wind-blown dust, voices echoing names across empty stone. Temperatures dropped into the 40s after sundown. The following morning, helicopters scanned from above. Using thermal imaging, nothing appeared, no movement, no heat signatures. The desert returned the same silence it always had. Authorities believe the couple may have wandered off trail during peak heat, the report said. Search efforts continue despite extreme conditions. Newspapers the next day ran nearly identical headlines: lost campers at Joshua Tree, couple missing in desert maze. For a week, the story held the public's attention. Then, like the heat, it faded. By day 10, the operation had cost the Park Service more than 2,000 man-hours. Water caches were left along major routes, in case either Aaron or Melissa was still moving on foot. None were disturbed. The campsite remained untouched. On the 11th day, Search Command recommended suspension. The decision was unanimous. At 6:42 p.m., the order was radioed across the valley. Hack it up. The Rowe family arrived that evening. They waited near the ranger station, hoping for word. There was none. A week later, the Park Service mailed back the recovered items: a cooler, a camp chair, 2 sleeping bags, and a melted flashlight. Aaron's colleagues from the high school held a candlelight vigil on the football field. Melissa's blog, her photography journal, stopped posting after July 16th. The last entry showed her sitting cross-legged on a blanket, camera in hand, captioned, "Last trip before baby girl arrives." With no evidence of foul play, the case remained open but inactive. The file was reduced to a single binder labeled Rowe, Aaron and Melissa, 071. It joined a long shelf of others. Families waiting, answers missing. For 13 years, that binder gathered dust. The coordinates of the site were archived, search maps folded, audio logs stored on fading tape. Eventually, the Rowe disappearance became less an investigation than a cautionary story told to new rangers. about how quickly the dessert can erase. Then, on March 22, 2023, the phone at the San Bernardino field office rang again. A hiker from Nevada had sent photographs showing a collapsed tent deep within a dry creek bed. The location, roughly 2 miles from the original search zone. Initial assumption was that it was unrelated, one of hundreds of forgotten campsites scattered through the park. But when investigators compared the markings on the tent fabric to the 2010 inventory, they matched. A small team was dispatched. They arrived at dawn 2 days later. The coordinates led them through eroded gullies and low brush until the shape appeared, fabric half-buried, poles twisted, seams split by sun. The site had the stillness of a photograph. Nothing had been touched, yet everything had changed. 13 years of wind had flattened the ground around it, erasing whatever story it once held. Forensic technicians began cataloging. Sand was sifted for trace material, metal fragments collected, a plastic buckle from a child's carrier, a zipper pull, rusted but intact. When the tent's central beam was lifted, the ground beneath it gave way, slightly soft, darker in color. A single droplet-sized stain had soaked into the fabric below. The chemical test confirmed what investigators suspected: human blood. It was not enough for identification, but it was enough to reopen the case. On April 2, 2023, the Rowe disappearance was officially reclassified as active investigation. Detective Claire Vega received the notice by courier that morning. She'd been retired for 3 years, living quietly near Palm Springs. Her name appeared throughout the original logs. Signatures, annotations, margin notes from field reports. When the message came, she hesitated before responding. The sender's note was short: "We found something. Could use your insight." A week later, Vega stood once more at Hidden Valley. The same stretch of sand, the same wind pressing against her coat, the outlines of the old campsite barely visible. She moved slowly, examining the perimeter markers that had survived the years. Every few steps she paused, glancing toward the horizon as if expecting movement. But there was none, only heat and memory. Vega had carried the Rowe file longer than she ever intended. In 2010, she'd logged 12 straight days on the case, sleeping in her vehicle between shifts. When the search ended, she wrote a final line in her report: unresolved, environment dominant. It was bureaucratic phrasing for what she could not explain. Now, 13 years later, the same terrain seemed to be asking her to look again. And she would, not just at the evidence, but at the record itself. Back in the field office, she reviewed the 2010 materials. Audio tapes degraded by heat, handwritten notes fading, but one entry caught her eye. A timestamp from the ranger log dated July 17th, 5:33 p.m. It referenced a secondary camp marker labeled Trail Echo. That location was never logged in the final search grid. It meant one thing: either a section of the original search zone had been missed, or someone had removed the documentation later. Vega knew the only way to find out was to start again, mile by mile, note by note. She requested access to all field recordings from 2010 and had them digitally restored. In the background of one, she noticed a sound, faint, rhythmic, repeating every 6 seconds. Not wind, not machinery, something else. It was the low battery alert of a digital camera, a model matching the one Melissa Rowe owned. That audio, hidden in the static for more than a decade, became the thread Vega would follow. The desert had kept its silence for 13 years. Now, at last, it was giving something back. 13 years after they vanished, one unheard message was still waiting to be played. What if the truth wasn't lost, just waiting for someone brave enough to press play? The desert buried their story once. Next part, we will open what it tried to keep. If you want the next piece of the investigation, subscribe now, because the next message plays soon.